Let's get that mic.
Yes. Okay, we're going to get started here. Thanks everybody in the room for coming and everybody online. So our speaker today is Valentine Puzenat. She's a PhD student at IPGP, which is the Institute of Planetary Physics in Paris, France. Val is visiting MBARI and HMSC. MBARI is the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and she's visiting here this summer. And she's going to be joining us on a research cruise to axial seamount that's leaving this Friday from Astoria. And she's also going to be back here at HMSC for a couple of weeks after the cruise in early July. And her talk today is the subject of her PhD thesis work. And it's about a pretty amazing story, the largest submarine volcano, submarine eruption ever recorded, and one of the largest eruptions on Earth, period, that we know of. So, Valentine, take it away.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So thanks, Bill, for the introduction. Thank you for having me here. I am excited to talk to you about the recent, or not so recent because time flies, discovery of Fani Maore, so back in 2019. And yeah, as Bill said, I will be around later this week and also in July, so I will be happy to talk with you about everything else in more details when we're back. So today we are going to dive into the Indian Ocean, particularly in the Comoros archipelago, which is located between the Mozambique and Madagascar. The geodynamic context of the area is pretty complicated and it's debated, and they have lots of studies going on, particularly on the nature of the lithosphere, which is not well understood yet, as the origin of intraplate volcanism in the area. So we'll just focus simply on the geographics of the archipelago today. So the archipelago is composed of 4 islands. So from west to east and from youngest to oldest, we have Grande Comore, Moélie, Anjouan, and Mayotte. So Mayotte, our focus, is the oldest of the 4 islands, and it's composed of 2 main islands, Grande Terre here and Petite Terre here. Magmatic activity at Mayotte is believed to have started somewhere between 15 and 30 million years ago, and the latest signs of subaerial volcanic activity in the area were recorded approximately 7,000 years ago in cores that were collected in the lagoon just over here. Over the past century, only 2 earthquakes have been recorded or felt on the island. So it was considered to be pretty quiet seismically, but that was until 2018. So on May 10, 2018, seismic stations on land, onshore Mayotte, that were installed by the French Geological Survey, you have their location here on Grande Terre, they started to record a very large number of very deep earthquakes, as you can see here. Some of them were up to 40 kilometers deep, even more. And just a few kilometers east of the island. So Mayotte is here, and the earthquakes were located, for the closest one, approximately 10 kilometers east, and extended all the way up to more than 100 kilometers. So that was pretty close to the population, and the fact that it was so sudden and so close, that rose many questions and worries, and lots of newspaper started to report the news around the world that something was going on at Mayotte. So I put the translation because most of the articles were French, but as you can see, over 800 earthquakes were recorded in 3 weeks. That's a lot compared to only 2 for 100 years, right? On May 15, 2018, the largest seismic event ever recorded in the Comoros archipelago was felt by the population. It was a magnitude of 5.8. and houses were damaged, so it did not collapse, but people started to see fissures occurring on the walls, which was pretty worrying. And they were scared, not knowing what was going on because it was pretty unprecedented in the area. So they decided to sleep outside to stay safe. There was a lot of unknown basically at the time. So all throughout the rest of 2018, unusual events kept happening. And the explanation of the seismic activity in the area was still uncertain, as shown in this interview from June 2018. So basically, it says that there were ruptures along fault plains north of Mayotte, that all of this is related to plate tectonics, as the geodynamic context is complicated. But we know we have tectonics, that's what they were saying, but we are not able to pinpoint exactly what the relation with tectonics and volcanism was at the time. That was until July 2018, because before that, they were not thinking about the creation of a new volcano because volcanic activity in Mayotte was pretty far behind. And in July 2018, fishermen started to make strange discoveries. So they reported that they found deep sea fish that were dead floating at the surface. And they reported as well a suffocating burnt tire smell a few kilometers, 50 kilometers east of Mayotte Island, which was pretty odd for fishermen to just stumble upon that fish. In November 2018, seismic stations and instruments worldwide recorded a very low frequency events that lasted for more than 20 minutes that was felt around the globe. That was the first time that such an event has occurred for such a long time. And such events are usually characteristic of magma resonance in magma chamber, so magma migrating in the crust. So all of these elements started to guide towards the possibility of a magma body moving its way up in the crust to erupt somewhere east of the island at the seafloor. So to confirm this hypothesis, there was a need to instrument better the area, because on all that we had so far was the seismic stations that recorded the first earthquakes. So that was the end of the aim, of the SIS Mayotte program that was founded by INSU. The first step was to install GNSS stations on land to monitor deformation. So here you have the location of the stations in black. And as you can see, there was definitely deformation. So the island was basically moving eastward and sinking. You can see on this plot here that the cumulative subsidence was about 20 centimeters just in a couple of months. Actually, the closest houses close to the sea and on the beach started to see the water rising up. And the island was also moving eastward, as I said. The cumulative displacement, can you still hear me? Yeah, was about 25 centimeters total. The second step of the SIS Mayotte program was to deploy OBSs, so ocean bottom seismometers, offshore Mayotte, in order to better locate the seismicity that was recorded on land and to better understand it. So here you have their location, the white squares, and they are underlain by the available bathymetry that we had at the time. That was from a survey of the French hydrographic office, the CHOM. I will use the word CHOM a lot, so that's who they are. And that was the only bathymetry available at the time. So around the island, and then just a few bands of data going east. The third step of the SIS Mayotte program was to actually acquire new marine geophysical data. And so that was done during the Mayotte 1 oceanographic expedition conducted in May 2019 on board the Marion Dufresne. So that was conducted almost a year after the beginning of the seismic crisis, because it took a long time to get ship time and to get a ship to go in the area. The goal on board was to acquire a large data set, so from sub-bottom profiles, magnetic data, gravimetry, and also to recover and redeploy the OBSs that had been deployed earlier that year on a cargo ship. But mostly, the biggest goal of that cruise was to acquire new multi-beam data, so bathymetry, water column, and backscatter offshore the island in order to fill the holes that were in the bathymetry available at the time, and to investigate really what was going on at the seafloor and to see whether or not we had a new eruption going on. So here you have the routes, the tracks of the ship during the cruise. And as you can see, something must have happened there because they stayed a lot of time in the area. So here is the detail of the area that was surveyed a lot during MIOPS 1. And that was the bathymetry from the SHOM acquired in 2014. That was the only data available for the bathymetry at the time. It was just one track of bathymetry transiting from Mayotte to Madagascar. So just opportunity data acquisition, just one band. And I will encourage you to look just over here, because in 2019, this is what they discovered. So right in the middle of that one band of bathymetry, that one track, they found a massive submarine volcano that wasn't there before. So that was pretty lucky. And here you have the bathymetric difference between the SHOM survey in 2014 and the MIOP survey in 2019. So at the time of the discovery in 2019, so around 1 year after the beginning of the seismic crisis, the new volcano was already, so here is the summit, 820 meters tall. It had erupted more than 5 cubic kilometers of lava. And so that's made it already the largest submarine eruption ever documented on Earth, and the largest effusive eruption since Laki's eruption in Iceland in 1783. Nice volumes. Sorry?
Eye-popping numbers.
So the bathymetric differences were not the only thing that helped discover the volcano, because as I said, they also wanted to acquire water column acoustic data. And at the time of the survey, so when they just went over the volcano, they discovered as well a massive acoustic plume in the water column that you see here in 3D that was more than 1.9 kilometer high. So perhaps explaining why the fish did not really like that. And at the time, it already showed strong geochemical signatures, so helium, methane, carbon dioxide, big plume. So they wanted to sample or to try to get some of the rock samples of these new lava flows. And of course, because they were suspecting that there was a volcano, but they didn't have all of the tools required to conduct specific submarine studies, so submarine vehicles and sampling instruments. All they had on board was a dredge. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's basically a big metal basket that you put at the seafloor, and then you get the ship to move, and you basically collect rocks by dragging the basket at the seafloor. That was the only thing that they had, but because the volcano was so widespread, they had pretty good chances of sampling the new lava flows. And so, let's see. Oops.
You might have to turn the pointer off to get your videos.
Oh. Thank you. There we go. And so I encourage you to listen to the sound. That is not popcorn. That is a rock gassing in the basket. This is a video that was taken from the back deck of the ship. And so there were these crackling sounds, these explosions. Actually, I think, so I wasn't there at the time, but I think that they had to stay inside for a couple of hours while waiting for the rocks to degas, because it was flying over the bridge or up to the upper decks.
Wow.
So popping rocks, popping rocks. So to sum up, so they did not focus only on the new volcano to do the new bathymetry acquisition, but they also did the entire insular slope. And by looking at the overall bathymetry data, we see that Fani Maoré, I did not give the name of the volcano, but for a long time it hadn't had a name. Now it's named Fani Maoré, the name I will use a lot in this talk. And so it was discovered at the tip of a 50-kilometer long volcanic chain, roughly trending east-west, totally submarine offshore Mayotte. made up of a large number of volcanic edifices, volcanic cones, recent lava flows, large diversity in terms of morphologies, in terms of volumes. And there are also other studies focusing on different areas along the ridge, the chain. But today we're focusing on Fani Maore, which is already a big piece of work. So to summarize what we know so far, what we knew after the eruption, it is believed that it started most likely in July 2018. You don't see my pointer anymore. Okay. And it's believed that it probably results from the drainage of a deep ascendospheric reservoir before May 2018. That deep reservoir refilled a less deep reservoir, leading to failure and diking in May-June 2018. So as you can see, the seismicity is really deep and not very located under the volcano. It's actually located just 10 kilometers east of the island, while the volcano is 50 kilometers. So there was an eastward migration of the magma during its way up. Actually, the seismicity is located under an area where we observe increasing degassing that is active since at least the beginning of the crisis. And every time they go back to monitor the evolution, they have new emission sites at the seafloor. And these, again, are described in other studies. But to date, we don't have any more significant ground displacement. Basically, all the subsidence and the eastward movement happened at the beginning of the crisis. The seismicity is lower, thankfully, but it's still ongoing, and we don't have signs of new lava flows at the seafloor since January 2021. But the seismicity is still there, so who knows? To date, Fani Maore is 800 meters tall at its summit. It has a base diameter of 5 kilometers, and it has erupted more than 6.5 cubic kilometers of lava. So again, making it the largest submarine eruption documented. So it's quite an exceptional phenomenon because it's associated with very deep seismicity, given its volumes, given the duration of the eruption, because it lasted for 3 years of continuous lava emitting at the seafloor. It has been monitored since 2019, so regularly, once or twice a year, they go back and do new bathymetry acquisition to monitor for depth changes, recover OBSs, redeploy them, pressure gauge, and everything. So it's monitored with the Mayotte cruises, but it's also investigated on research cruises that focus on specific research questions with many disciplines. But the goal of all of this is to get a whole data set in order to understand the bigger picture. And so this is an excellent opportunity, a nice natural laboratory to better understand the origin of volcanic activity in the area, which is again not well known, but also to better understand deep submarine volcanic processes at the global scale, because it's documented, but it's not really understood yet. So nope. Because to date, there are still very few volcanic eruptions that have been documented at sea. Here you have a map that shows recent eruption over the past 500 years. The yellow dots are the subaerial eruption, and the red dots are the deep submarine eruption. So even though volcanic activity occurs mostly at sea, we do not observe, detect, or monitor volcanoes yet. And on this map, only a few eruptions have been studied systematically and over a wide range of scales. So that is where my PhD project takes place, because I use lava flow morphology as a proxy to understand the dynamics of submarine eruptions. So what I use is a combination of different data sets. So from the ship-based bathymetry data acquired with a sonar from the ship that has a resolution of 30 meters, to high-resolution bathymetry data. Here you have the extent of the survey I'm using in this talk. That has a resolution of 2 meters approximately. And the last step is the optical imagery from submarines. So just imaging at the seafloor with video, either from ROVs, so remotely operated vehicles, or deep towed camera, depending on what is available, because we don't have unlimited ship time and submarine time, right? What I do as well, and I will explain it a bit later, it will be better with examples, is computing 3D reconstructions of seafloor outcrops using the video imagery that I have. So here you have an example of a 3D models, and these are useful to better understand the bigger picture because yes, we want the fine scale, but we also have trouble. I mean, if I like to think of it as if you were walking at night with a flashlight, you see what you have, but to understand what is actually going on around you, you need to have the bigger picture. And so that is done partly, that is a big part of my PhD to try and reconstruct 3D outcrops to have models that are oriented, georeferenced, sized, like if we would do volcanology on land. So basically at Fani Maoré, which is the focus of my PhD, I use a multi-scale approach in order to document the fine-scale morphologies and eruptive processes associated with the eruption and to constrain the precise chronology and spatial variability of lava flow emplacements. The ultimate goal of all of that is to better understand the processes involved in submarine volcanism. And in the case of Mayotte, it's also important to bring up clues to estimate hazards associated with potential new volcanic activity. Uh-oh. Oh no, yeah, the images are pretty heavy. So the first part of the project was to analyze from the lowest resolution that we have, which is already pretty good, but it's still the lowest. That is the ship-based bathymetry. And so, as I said, we conducted repeated seafloor surveys over the years and over the monitoring cruises to have repeats data in order to monitor the evolution of lava flow. So I will show you the different bathymetry surveys that we have acquired over the years. And doing so, we can follow the emplacement of the different lava flows around Fani Maore and then its summit. So here is the SHOM bathymetry, which is from 2014. So just the one, you have really the extent, you see, was just in the middle of it. They got lucky. That is the extent of the SHOM bathymetry from 2014. And if you look here, oh, this is going to take a while. You have the extent of the bathymetry that was acquired in May 2019 that I showed just before. So this was the largest change observed because, as I said, the eruption is believed to have started in July 2018 and was discovered, I mean, this bathymetry data were acquired in 2019, so more than a year after the eruption, almost a year after the beginning of the eruption. The fluxes at the time maximum were about 180 meter cube per second, which was pretty huge. So that explains the large difference that we see for the very first survey. After the discovery of the volcano, they were able to conduct more frequent cruises to investigate the evolution because that was a major discovery, of course. And so this is when we started seeing smaller but more precise changes in the bathymetry, so to be able to decipher exactly which way the lava traveled. So I'm just going to go back and forth. Basically, in June 2019, the activity migrated south over here. There you go. And then in July 2019, the activity moved west, forming this new arm of the volcano. And then filling in this basin west of the volcano. So between August 2019 and May 2020, something in the world happened that led many projects to be paused. That was COVID. And so basically, we don't have any bathymetry data between August 2019 and May 2020, which is a long time in the context of this eruption. But basically, what we can see is that we don't know how exactly or which way it went through, but the lava flow started to, basically, the eruption migrated, the activity, sorry, migrated to the northwest here. And I will just go back and forth again so that you can see. So in August, there was nothing. And in May of the next year, you have new lava to the northwest. And this area will be called the tic-tac area. If I say tic-tac area, it's in that region, or the northwestern region, because there is a little tic-tac or coffee bean shaped edifice here. In October 2020, the activity was still focused in the northwest. And in January 2021, we have evidence of smaller lava flow emplacement here. And then we arrived in 2021, in spring 2021, for the GeoFlam cruise, which is the cruise that is the focus of my PhD. So we arrived there with an ROV with the goal of observing the lava flow being in place during repeat high-resolution survey of live lava flows. But as I said, the last sign of eruptive activity were in January 2021. So we saw pretty recent lava, but no active lava, although I might have a surprise from another data set at the end of the talk. So this is the data from the GeoFlam cruise that my PhD focuses on. This is the latest, and basically this is the state of the volcano to this day. It hasn't changed ever since. So to summarize all of these observations, this is the map of a relative chronology of lava flow emplacements from the bathymetric differences that I showed you. So to sum up, we have the big change that we discovered in May 2019. Then migration to the south, the formation of a western arm, and the migration of the activity to the northwest. The latest sign of volcanic activity are the greenish patches, so from January 2021. So that is a temporal analysis, but what I'm focusing on is a textual analysis. So basically, I look at the last bathymetry survey that we have, and I map and quantify the different morphologies that we have at the seafloor. So looking at it, I realized that I could have done different colors, but there are only so many colors for the different lava flows. But basically, I map 4 main textures at the seafloor. So from the highest, the roughest topography, which are the hummocky areas in dark blue, to the flatter lava flow, which show no relief in light blue. In the hummocky areas, we map individual hummocks, and I don't know if you're perhaps familiar, but these are pillow mounds, individual cones that are found throughout. On the flat lava flow, we do not observe any kind of topography except for some lava channels here and there. But again, the resolution is 30 meters, so for flatter lava flow, it's difficult to image precise structures. In between the flat lava flows and the hummocky lava flows, we have an intermediate texture that is not quite as high or rough as the hummocky flows, but that shows still individual hummocks at the seafloor. What is important to notice is the smooth summit of the volcano. So it's not a flat flow. It has some relief, some topography, but I like to call it, it has the aspect of powdered sugar, like powdered snow around the summit. And it's cross-cut by linear ridges that you see here. And I also have to point out that we observed hummocky ridges, meaning the emplacement, the alignment of different hummocks at the seafloor. So that's a lot of information, but what is a key message here is that we do not observe any pattern between the chronology of events and the morphology that is in place. For example, if we go from May 2019 to July 2019, we have the emplacement of hummocky, and flat. But if we look at the latest signs of volcanic activity, we have the emplacement of flat, and then less flat, and then hummocky. So far, the chronology does not seem to be the most important factor in the emplacement, the chronology. The time scale, the evolution of the eruption does not seem to be the important factor in the emplacement of the different morphologies, if that makes sense. Now, the focus of my PhD is using this high resolution data in order to confirm what we see at a larger scale, because what is true at a larger scale also has to be true at a smaller scale. And in order to better image and understand the features that are lower than the resolution of the bathymetry, we need to have a high resolution. So here you have, again, the map that I showed just before. The black outline is the limits, the outer limits of the new lava flows, and colored overlaying, you have the 2 surveys of high resolution bathymetry that we acquired during the GeoFlam cruise in 2021. So I conducted again the same interpretation using the same color code, so that might help to. There's a lot of scales and lots of information, so it's basically the summit is here. Voila. And so again, we see the emplacement of hummocky lava flows, flat hummocky, and flat seafloor. Although the difference is that we can image much more hummocks, individual hummocks in the hummocky flows, because the resolution is much better. We can see as well that some of these hummocks are collapsed. So as some areas on the flatter lava flows that are indicative of channelized lava flow just traveling at a much higher effusion rate. Now, if you focus on the summits, we find again a very smooth texture, meaning that the features that are present at the summits of the volcano have a topography, a resolution. I mean, their size is even lower than the resolution of the ROV bathymetry, which is less than 2 meters. But what we can see and notice that is different from the ship-based bathymetry is that the linear features, if you remember these ridges, well, we can image them much better on the high resolution bathymetry, and we see that we have plateaus and linear feature that I will describe a bit more using optical imagery. So I have to point out that during the GeoFlam cruise, the goal was to image each textures that we mapped on the bathymetry to have ground truthing of the data for every type of lava flow. Now, as you can see, that doesn't look like a very glassy, fresh volcano, because we went there 2 years after, I mean, almost 3 years. So see, if the eruption started in 2018, we were there in spring 2021. So more than 3 years after the beginning of the eruption. And so just the summit and the whole volcano was covered with a thick layer of a mix of fine volcanic clastic deposits, microbial mats, iron dioxide, making it difficult to really see what the actual lava were underneath, and also making the water around very turbid. So below a certain threshold, we couldn't see anything. So we just decided to focus our in situ optical surveys on the highest point of the volcano, because there was no point in going further down. We didn't see anything. It was just the ROV was 1 meter off the seafloor, and we couldn't see the bottom. It was crazy. So I will focus on the summit here. So here you have a close-up of the northern ridge. And so if I detail the bathymetry, what is interesting is this circular crater that we imaged with the ROV. And so it's really smooth in the bathymetry. And what we can see on the optical imagery is that we try to sample it, and it was just this thick layer of volcanic sand, black volcanic sand, covering up the inside. Now, this northern ridge, this northern going fissures, if I might say, there were other fissures emerging from that northern fissure. It's difficult to do geology with hands. But basically, using the optical imagery, we're able to decipher and to propose to document that these little fissures emerging from the bigger fissures are actually pillow lava flows and lava tubes covered with fine volcanic material. So here you have, I have to remove the pointer. Yep. You have a video extract that will help to illustrate how useful the 3D models are to understand how small scale the changes can be. But basically, we see that these little ridges are pillow lava flows covered by fine volcanic material, suggesting that the fine volcanic material postdates the emplacement of the pillows. And And so this is one of the 3D reconstructions. We can talk about it, about the methodology a bit more after if you're interested in it. Now, if we move on to the eastern ridge here, well, we observe pretty much the same morphology. So an eastern going fissure with emerging lava flows on both sides that we image again using the optical imagery and the 3D models. But this one is much higher. We have a higher topography on that ridge. And so that was helpful to, the imagery was helpful to decipher whether or not it was a fissural eruption, like a lava fontaine type, or if it was a lava flow. And what we can see on these images is that it's actually just a thick layer of massive lava being in place to the east and not just overlapping lava like a fissural type eruption. And that's what we can see on this 3D model, just a thick layer of lava. Now, if we focus on the most summital part of the volcano, so again, this is the summit. So, oh, nice. Merci. Thank you. So the summit is here and here. So this is basically the highest point of the volcano. And what we can see is that it's formed of these lava plateaus, shoulder pads that are not really described elsewhere, although we've seen West Mata. I think it's the only place where we can observe them. But basically, they are made up of low-bait lava flows and pillow lavas that are collapsed and that result in the formation of talus, which have sizes of less than 1 and 2 meters that could explain the smooth aspect of the summit, if you remember. But also what we observe at the summit is ongoing cooling activity resulting in the manifestation of shimmering here in fractures. Oops. There you go. We could see shimmering through fractures of lava. And on that image, you can also see pretty well how thick the eruptive mats were in that area and making it difficult to image what was underneath. And together with this shimmering, we also have areas of more focused venting and degassing, although this chimney was not active at the time of geoflam, but we have different occurrences of these chimneys around the summit, indicating strong cooling of the lava at the time of emplacement. That was the summit, and for the summit, we don't have a lot more details than that. I mean, in the chronology, because it was only placed before we went there. So we have complex morphologies. We're able to decipher really fine scale, so overlapping fine products or pillow lava. But that's really all the details we have, because then we have the emplacement of the Western lava flow that we were able to image in July 2019. And so, again, I will point out that this is not ROV imagery, because we couldn't see anything at the time of geoflam, because it was just 3 years later. That was deep tow imagery. So the deep tow camera is just a camera that you tow behind the ship, kind of like you tow the dredge behind the ship. That's the camera. And then you cannot really stop, which is a bit frustrating, because you just drag it around. And if you see something, well, you see it, but you cannot do anything about it. So anyway, this was still nice to have imagery in that area. And what we can see is that it's composed of pillow lava and low-bait lava that are common in submarine settings. And sometimes these structures, so these flat lava flows, are collapsed, showing sheet flow at their bottom, indicating channelized lava flow and lava traveling much faster than at the hummocky areas on the summit. So the last signs of eruptive activity, as I said, were to the northwest in the Tic Tac area. Here you can see it pretty well. Or I like to call it the coffee bean, but then we have to be consistent. So I did the same quantitative analysis of the bathymetry, so with the interpretation. And I'm sorry, I just realized I don't have a legend here, but it's pretty much the same color code. But I'm still working on that area, especially trying to analyze the optical imagery. But what we can see is the same, I mean, flatter lava flows, hummocky seafloor that is composed of individual pillow mounds. But what I wanted to show you is that even though we don't have signs of eruptive activity during the geoflam cruise, we have, I mean, I wasn't there, sadly, but they were lucky in 2020, using the Scampi, so the deep towed camera, they were able to observe live footage of lava flow emplacement in that area. Oops, oh no. And that was only the second time that lava was directly observed being in place at the seafloor. So you can see pillow lavas being in place. These are the orangey red areas just propagating really slowly. And so that's the only footage of live eruption that we have at Fani Maoré. And sadly, the camera was smashed on a glassy lava, hence explaining the dark spots. And we don't have high quality footage, but still a pretty nice discovery. And I'm sure that must have been really exciting on board. So I will try to conclude and to summarize everything, even though that was a lot of information. I will be happy to discuss about more details or specific things that you want to ask afterwards. But Fani Maore is a stellar-shaped volcano, as we've seen, with many arms going in different directions. And we'll still have to understand and really decipher what were the mechanism of lava emplacement. So did they travel through lava tunnels, or do we have many outflow, many vents areas within the seafloor? That is still a work in progress. But it's still a great lab to study deep submarine volcanic processes. We've seen that the summit of Fani Maore consists of lava plateaus that are made up of lobate and pillow lavas covered with volcanic clastic deposits, making it difficult to really understand. But away from the summit, we identify eruptive hummocks that are similar to what we observe at other submarine settings. Now, what is a key point as well is that the 2018 eruption likely had both effusive and pyroclastic components, because we have strong evidence for explosive activity, as we've seen with the craters and the black volcanic sand, for water depths of up to approximately 2,700 meters, which is not something that is really described at these depths. So is it because of the technical bias, because we cannot go all the time on deep sea volcano, or is it because it's not common? That's a big question as well. But basically, the strong morphological differences that we see at very fine scales that imply a local variability of the eruptive dynamics. So now what's next? Well, I will continue to be working on this data to provide a quantitative assessment of the links between the identified morphological textures on the bathymetry and what I see on the optical imagery. And those results will be linked to the temporal evolution. So I've started that, but it will be further analyzed to link everything. So from the chronology to the lava, to the morphology during the large submarine eruption. And the ultimate goal is to constrain the precise chronology, timescale, and mode of lava flow emplacement, while again providing clues to better understand deep sea submarine volcanic processes, which are as intriguing as they are exciting and fascinating. So thank you for your attention. And I will leave you with a nice image of one of the clearest view that we had. So this is really nice footage. This is the best visibility that we had at Fani Maore in 2021. Merci.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up for questions. Any questions in the room?
What were the temperatures down there?
Well, close to seafloor temperatures, 2 to 4 degrees, although we've had some temperature anomalies at different points. We did some punctual temperature measurements that showed higher temperature, but of course, we have 800 meters of lava cooling down, so that might take a while. So
Did you measure any of the hydrothermal vent temperatures?
the chimney that I showed on the 3D model, that wasn't active anymore.
Shimmery.
Oh yeah, that we had temperature anomalies. That's where we measured. So I'm not working on them right now, so I might not have all of the precise values in mind, but I think we've had some pretty high measurements of around 10 degrees, perhaps up to 20 degrees Celsius. Yeah, no black smokers, if that's your question.
Another question here.
Oh, that was gonna be my question.
Oh, I should run around with the microphone. I forgot.
That was gonna be my question. Did the ROV take any temperature measurements? It sounds like yes.
Yes.
Another question is the smooth lava on the summit. Is that likely to be a thinner lava flow? Is that why it's smooth? Low viscosity.
You mean the smooth aspects, the one I'm mapped in purple?
Mhm.
That is actually collapsed, a mixture of collapsed lava, so talus, because the lava plateaus were collapsed, so either post-eruptive or when they were being emplaced. But they result in the formation of blocks that are less than 1 meter in size. So that is below the resolution of the bathymetry, so we cannot image them. And we also have evidence of thick layers of volcanic sand that we cannot, we don't image at the centimeter scale at Fani Maore. I would like to, but we don't, so we have limitations in terms of the
So
higher
really
resolution.
textures are fragmental.
Not in place, yes.
Questions online, Simon? Okay. Yeah.
So you said there was evidence of cinder and some more, not necessarily pyroclastic flows, but broken up lava material. Was there collection of some of those samples? So is somebody looking at, I'm just curious about, so you think there was more possibly either fountaining or some kind of a more explosive aspect to this eruption? I don't know, what kind of particles were they finding in those samples?
So they found tephras. We sampled them with a little vacuum to be able to get really fine particles. And we have people working at IPGP that collected tephras and glass fragments. They are at the moment conducting a quantitative study on their size, shape, color in order to compare with other settings. So it's ongoing. Another scale, much finer.
Any other questions? Oh, here's another one.
Oh, Fani Maore. So it's a dialect. I'm sure I will have to make sure of that, but I think Maore means warrior. In Maore dialect, which is the local language offshore Mayotte, not offshore, on Mayotte. Offshore we don't speak. And Fani Maore, the name was, there were many debates for a long time to find the name. So for a couple of years, it was named New Volcanic Edifice. And so it was recently baptized Fani Maore, warrior, but I have to be sure.
Since that activity stopped here, do you have any seismic evidence or also from the bathymetry that it could be activities in other areas?
Well, the seismicity is still ongoing, although it's slower. But as of signs of new eruption, I mean, new lava flow being erupted and being visible at the seafloor, we don't have any. So we are monitoring this area, Fani Maore, but it's not moving since 2021. And we are also monitoring another area, the one that shows the degassing, because it shows recent volcanic features that are being dated. We have ages, the youngest one, around 8,000 years. So it's not 2018, but it's still pretty recent on the geological timescale. But yet we are monitoring over there, doing repeat survey. But so far, nothing. I would like to, but
I have a question. I didn't know that Mayotte was the oldest island in the archipelago, so that's very interesting. and Curious. So what's the most recent ages of volcanism on the youngest island in the west?
ooh, Cartala. I'm sorry, I don't have the.
Historical or?
Yeah, historical. Yes, historical. Cartala is very active. I don't have the precise date though.
Right.
But yeah, it's been believed for a long time that just the activity was moving from east to west.
Right.
And now we have this activity offshore Mayotte. So it's
Right.
all being
Right.
questioned, and
Yeah.
we have lots of questions at Fani Maore and
Yeah.
lots of questions in the Comoros. So lots of
So
work.
the islands, were they from plate movement over hotspots?
So it has been believed for a long time that the Comoros archipelago was the result of a hotspot activity. Now it's most probably at the interface of two plates. So there would be a transtensional plate boundary that would be the relay between the East African Rift and the Grabens of Madagascar. And then creating this transtensional boundary, explaining as well the north 110 orientation of all the features in the archipelago.
So, yeah, so there's shear, but also opening. But yeah. This question online.
That's a question.
All right, so the question online is asking if you can describe the thickness and appearance of the layer on top of the volcanics. Was it a layer of black volatistics covered with a layer of like iron oxides?
It really is a mixture of a lot of things. So I couldn't show everything, but I'm also mapping all of the different colors that I see for that particular layer of fine deposits. And in some places, it's really beige. So a thick layer of volcanic mud, bacterial mats, altered. I mean, really, if you go there and not know that the eruption was just a couple of years ago, it looks old. Then in other places, it's really red, so lots of iron dioxides. And then if you just dig up a little and remove the red layer, and as I showed it in one slide on the crater, you will have this thick layer of black, totally black sand. So it's really layered, stratified, and it's different around the summit.
So I have a couple other. So following up on that, the eruptions at Axel also looked old in the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, at Axial Seamount. That was very confusing at first when we went out and were mapping new lava flows on the seafloor. They looked old, and that was because they were hot and cooling, and there had been so much hydrothermal activity that microbes had grown on the lava surface, and they, along with iron oxide, and so they were all orangey and covered with all this fluffy stuff. And yeah, at first glance they looked old, but then you scrape that stuff off and there's glassy lava underneath. Yeah. And the thicker the lava flow, the more heat, the longer it takes to cool, the thicker these deposits. And so on thin flows, they might look very glassy and black and young, but thick flows look crazy, covered in all this fluffy stuff. So that
just want to remove everything
so
to
very, very similar.
One more question here. You talked about the overall rate of eruption. Do you know how eruption rate relates to the lava morphologies? Thinking about your lobe versus pillows versus sheet flows.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the questions I'm investigating, or I will be when I go back to France. But yes, I mean, we see that there is no clear relationship between the overall chronology and the morphology. Now, is it the slope? Is it the pre-existing topography? Is it the fluxes? That's a big question I'm trying to investigate right now. Thank you for the questions. And thank you for all of your questions. I didn't say.
Okay, another question in the room.
Is the seismic network good enough to pick up harmonic tremor now? So if lava was moving, would they be able to pick up the what we call harmonic tremor, the kind of seismicity that is evidence of lava moving in the system?
Oh, you mean like the VLF that they detected in 2018 in November? There would be, yes, but the activity has decreased a lot, but they would be able to, yes. And there is a plan for deploying a cable observatory offshore Mayotte that should come up in the next years. We'll see how it goes, but yes, so far the network is pretty good, but not cabled, and the goal is to make it stable and permanent.
OBSs are, yeah, you don't get real-time data,
Right.
but a cabled observatory would, yeah.
Yeah.
What's your guess on what's going to happen next?
Oh, I guess that's a question you get a lot. Honestly, this volcano keeps surprising me. When you think you understand something, you just don't anymore, just the image after that. So honestly, I don't know. And I like getting more surprises while I keep working on this volcano. And I would hope to see new lava flows to see how it goes next and what it does. And I don't know. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure it out.
The outside line soon?
Yeah, one more.
Okay.
Do you have any idea why the eruptions so far have been so horizontally different from the seismic? I'm not asking this question very well. Do you have any idea why the eruption is so far away? Right, horizontally.
Well, and also for seismicity.
Right, from the side of the
Mm. Right. So it might be due to just weaker areas in the lithosphere in the crust, leading to just magma being able to make its way up easier going east than just going straight up. But I mean, we also have seismicity the earthquakes are really, really peculiar. What is the word? They have the seismicity has a particular shape, just because there are two clusters, and the proximal cluster, it has kind of like this hourglassy shape. So there is some